Hi, everybody. I am Jen Johnson, and you are listening to Thought by Thought Healing, where I talk about everything related to chronic pain and chronic symptoms. I come at this from a Christian perspective, and so if that's important to you, then you're in the right place. And I would love if you would subscribe and like or share any videos that are helpful for your healing journey. If you're listening on podcast platforms, I'd love if you'd leave a review. That's how we get this hope out there, which is exactly what I want to do. I'm a chronic pain coach, and I help people to understand the brain's role in chronic symptoms and how if we target our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, mindset, we really can reverse these symptoms. And today's story is proof of that. Today, I have the unbelievable honor of interviewing Emilia Cameron and her father, Neil, who are willing to come on the show and share their story, her story, of recovering from awful chronic pain to being pain-free and playing the sports that she wants to play. And so in her own words, she's going to share what she came from.
That's it. That's it, Emilia. Second class done.
And then we are going to see how she uses the mind-body connection to bring her to a place where she is living life like a regular 10-year-old should. It's pretty amazing, right? Even after watching that 10 times, I am still in awe and so thankful that Emilia is where she is today. So without further ado, let's hear her version of how she was able to use tools to recover from these chronic symptoms. I am just so excited and honored to have with me today Emilia Cameron. Emilia, thank you so much for being willing to come on. Do you want to just say hi, wave at the people that will be watching this later?
Hi.
There she is, you guys, Emilia, and Neil Cameron, her father. So they have quite the story. I actually. Neil, how you reached out to me, or maybe you reached out to Penny George of Living Proof, and then she sent you my way. Is that how that happened?
That's right. It's sort of following the dots, really, in that sense. So we, as part of Emilia's recovery, went to see Carolyn Neeson, who is one of the ambassadors for Penny's not-for-profit organization, Living Proof. And I saw a link to Living Proof on an email from Carolyn, and then followed it, and then got in touch with Penny as well, and went from there. And part of that sort of circular system was also getting back in touch with Georgie Oldfield at SAPRA, who I'd contacted towards the right on the second last day of Emilia's hospital sort of visit, which was pretty much the length of February. I had followed a few dots and reached out to Georgie Oldfield at SAPRA for help. And she had directed me to Carolyn. So we've gone, in a sense, full circle back to you now.
Yeah.
And connecting everyone. So I'm delighted to have met you last week and meet you again tonight or this morning with you.
Right. Yeah. Where are you guys? Emilia, where do you live?
In Scotland.
In Scotland. And what time is it there?
And it's 40 minutes past 6.
6. Okay, so you're 8 hours later than me. Okay.
Yeah. In the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
You're just hoping my office clock was correct.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start by just a brief summary of like, Neil, why did you get a hold of Penny and me? Let's start there. What is it that you want to share with the world?
Yes, well, one thing that we never thought we would be in this situation in that sense. Emilia came down during the course of an afternoon nap on the 2nd of January with chronic pain in both legs. And during the course of that month, was then tested, very high-level tests with MRI and EMGs to rule out anything else. And we were discharged from hospital mid-January with a working diagnosis of myalgia and with a prescription of amitriptyline, which is an anticonvulsant drug used in the UK for this types of chronic pain, at least. And we were advised if the conditions didn't improve in 2 weeks to increase the dose of amitriptyline. And then shortly after that increase, Emilia had a relapse, and with incredible flare-ups of chronic pain in both legs, and was essentially crippled as a result of the pain. Admitted to hospital the very next day, with weekends back at home, but during the week in hospital, and the diagnosis at that point of complex regional pain syndrome for early February. So one of the first conversations I had with the pediatric consultant on the beginning of February was, is this similar to fibromyalgia and ME? And the consultant, to be fair to her, said, yes, it's in the same spectrum, but it's more complex. And that was almost the end of the conversation in that sense. And we were in the system, and we had some very stressful times in hospital for several weeks. And with the sort of the National Health Service doing honestly the best they possibly could, and trying to give us all the services they had available. And we, through past experience, had some knowledge of mind-body medicine 18 years or so ago with my wife. And I started looking at that again, and wondering how it could apply to Emilia.
Emilia, what was that time like for you? I mean, you wake up one morning and you have pain in both feet, and now you're going to the hospital. When you look back at it, what do you remember?
Well, before my relapse, I could hobble.
Okay.
So it wasn't that bad. I was like a really bad injury still, but I could cope with it. But then when the relapse did happen, then that's when the big impact came for me. I couldn't do anything, and that's when I was put into hospital for a full week, except from the weekend.
Yeah. Did you say you couldn't walk?
Yeah, I couldn't walk.
Yeah. Okay. Was that scary?
Yeah. I always have to move something. I love sports and running and all that. So when I was told not to walk on your legs, I was a bit confused because I've not really done that much.
Because you love to be active and move and play?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like all this pain came on, and then they told you shouldn't do the things you love because you got to take care of your body. Is that kind of the message you got from doctors?
Yeah, but then I was told it's for your own good and you don't want to be stuck in a wheelchair forever.
Uh-huh. So, interesting. So did you use a wheelchair?
Yeah, well, not initially. No, not initially. We came home on a Friday evening after a full week in hospital each week. So the aunts, the reason for Emilia's stay in hospital wasn't for any medical or medication reasons in that sense.
Okay.
The reason for being in hospital was to be available for 2 physio sessions per day, 5 days a week. And that was the way that the local hospital felt that they should be dealing with this, and try and get Emilia walking again. And unfortunately, during the first 2 weeks at least of hospital stay, that was almost impossible, wasn't it? She was unable to even bear her own weight, let alone take a step. So there was 1 session of hydrotherapy in hydro pool a day, and 1 session of more sort of gym work in that sense. But quite quickly, we'll put it into context, the hydro pool should be the easiest element of that therapy. And Emilia had to be hoisted into the hydro pool on each occasion. She couldn't even bum shuffle down a slope into the pool. The pain was so bad. So that was for a couple of weeks.
I couldn't bend it.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't bend it unless I was like sitting.
Okay.
So say if you're going down the seat, you'd have to bend your legs.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be hanging. You'd have to put weight on them to hold your body up for a second.
Yeah.
But I couldn't.
You couldn't hold your body for a second. No.
Wow. So this was, you said, post flare up, is that right? So there was a lot of pain, and then did things get a little bit better for a while, and then you had a flare up, and then you discovered and pursued this as if it was mind-body medicine? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, sort of, yes. I mean, we initially, at the beginning of January, didn't know what on earth it was. Didn't know. And we went to the doctors were closed for the New Year holidays. They opened the next day. Emilia and her older sister Willow both had a bug as well. And there was a lot of winter flu, and there was strep A going around the area as well. So we presented to the GP, the doctor, and he gave both children some antibiotics and said, well, maybe things will clear up in 5 days. By the end of that next weekend, we went to the hospital. Emilia was in so much pain. She had certain tests done, which basically showed everything to be okay. And no markers of anything going wrong. Yeah. And we were advised to go and see the doctor again the next day, on Monday. So we did that. Blood tests were taken, sent to the local hospital, and then we were called in 2 days later that evening for some tests on Emilia. And that started the process, I suppose, of the high-level tests to rule out anything else, which took 4 to 5 days. So the working diagnosis started with fibromyalgia. Then it was something called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And fortunately, Emilia was spared a lumbar puncture to take fluid from her spinal column, because all her tests were showing everything was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
So that directed us very strongly to a neurological disorder and a neuropathic pain.
Yes.
So that started the journey I suppose, towards or back towards mind-body medicine for me in that sense. So that was the event. But we ruled out through very swift medical help, and that there was no nasties, there was nothing else untoward going on. There was obviously real pain, but there wasn't anything else. So that was important.
So then at that point, it sounds like from my previous conversation with you, you actually took the reins and presented and asked questions, leading you guys towards mind-body syndrome, but kind of asking the doctors, could this be it? Is my understanding correct? And what did that look like and feel like, and how did doctors respond to that?
Mm-hmm. Well, initially on being discharged, I'd had a verbal conversation with a junior consultant who had mentioned this phrase, complex regional pain syndrome, in mid-January, and I'd never heard of it before. And I wasn't sure whether she had said chronic regional pain syndrome or complex regional pain syndrome. I hadn't come across it before. And Emilia was discharged, but the discharge note said myalgia. So I suppose, didn't take a backward step, but I'd sort of just paused slightly on where we went next, and waited for to see if the prescribed amitriptyline was going to make any difference. I mean, at that time, Emilia was mobile. She was able to hobble herself to the toilet. She was able to, with help, get up and down stairs slowly, and so things weren't awful in that sense, but she was still in pain, and we were hoping the prescription was going to help.
And for those listening, myalgia means pain of the muscles. Is that the way doctors described it to you? Just like generalized primary pain?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, Emilia's legs were, at that time, one leg was slightly worse than the other.
Yeah.
So generally, the pain was from the top of the thigh to the bottom of the shin. So there was no pain in her feet. She was able to stand and walk gently. But any swift movement hurt in that sense. Was that pain?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then
fine. Like I could wiggle my feet and all that.
At that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did that change then for you?
It started getting sore after the relapse, wiggling my feet.
Okay.
Because my legs got a bit worse.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't...
When did your allodynia start?
I think it was at the...
Before the relapse?
Yeah, it was before the relapse.
Meaning allodynia, meaning your pain started to spread?
Just almost an amplified pain sensation from normal touch on her legs. So if you went to touch Emilia's legs, she would be in severe pain, just with a gentle touch. Even you got to the point where you couldn't sleep even with a duvet on. In that sense, you were in a sort of a cozy sleep suit.
And then I couldn't wear leggings because they would just like stick onto my legs. I had to wear something baggy on my legs.
Yeah. I was similar to you. Mm-hmm.
I remember going into the doctor's unknown and I was screaming in the waiting room because I had leggings on, and also because the pain was just too severe. I couldn't cope with it.
And I've seen a couple of videos of you, and one is of you in great pain. So now I'm understanding more. Maybe it was in part because your brain was sensitized to that. to those leggings. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's move towards the hope. So we know the story has a good ending. What was it like when you started changing your approach and started treating it like mind-body syndrome? Let's hear from Emilia first. What was that like for you to transition into healing?
It was hard at first. I didn't understand anything.
Okay.
Because it's like all the groups using like big words, and I
Yeah.
don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
Until then, I start repeating, "I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm okay," and then I understand what that means, and then painting really helped me in hospital and arts and crafts. I would paint what I wish it was like instead of my legs being sore, and that distracted and also brought me hope inside. And I was trying basically to make paintings come true.
Wow. I'm brave, I'm strong, and I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that do you think that helped you to face the fear of your pain, to realize you were strong enough and you were going to be okay and you could?
It gave me courage, and then when I got courage, I started listening more because at first I had no idea what it meant,
Yeah.
and then people explained to me what the words meant, and then I understood it.
They explained to you what the words in mind-body syndrome meant? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
They told me what would happen, what's happening inside my brain, and basically how to fix it, but not like using all the big words.
Okay. And when you say how to fix it, is there, because everybody who's healed from this struggles with how do I explain this? How do I describe this? Because it's we don't hear about it very often. And here you are, you're 10, is that right?
Yeah, turning on 11.
Okay, you're turning on 11 and you're having to understand this big concept. Do you have a way that you know how to explain it or understand it?
Well, not really, but the things that helped me was the repeating, "I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm okay." I had, what was the one? What was the one?
The hospital child psychologist.
Yeah, the psychologist who she understood that I don't like talking about my feelings, so I like painting about them. So I would do I paint what I wish hospitals like. I'd paint what I want to do inside me. I'd basically do all the stuff I wish, and I wish just would get better. And about we used to do a scale from 1 to 10 on how the pain was. It was always a 10.
Okay.
Except from before the relapse, it was something like 7. Well, it was 8 at that time because I hadn't felt the real thing after the relapse. So I said it was a 10, but compared to after the relapse, it was probably a 7.
Okay.
Put it into context.
Yeah. So it sounds like these things kind of helped you, the painting and the arts and crafts helped you to express your emotions and to move past fear, because then you also have this language, "I'm brave, I'm strong, I'm okay," which directly combats and says no to fear. So Did fear have something? Do you feel like you were fighting against fear and choosing courage instead?
Yeah, but my family helped me with that.
Mm-hmm.
And my cat also supported me. She had video calls with me.
Oh, because your cat was at home and you were still in the hospital?
Yeah. The first time I came back home, she was sitting on a chair. Her eyes were really wide, and she was almost crying. She was meowing so much at the door.
She
and
missed
I came in, I remember her just licking my legs and everything.
That's sweet. Okay, so Neil, from your perspective, what was that transition like? What was the time moving from treating this CRPS to healing? And we haven't even mentioned, but I actually want to ask first, Emilia, like what kind of activities and sports are you doing now? You've healed.
I'm doing running,
Okay.
which is my favorite sport.
Which way?
It's my favorite sport.
Okay, favorite sport.
Yeah. I've been recently did inter-school sports against basically most of the schools in Nairn. So that's like short put, high jump, long jump, javelin, and that. And then I play football at home.
Okay.
And I play teeny bits of basketball sometimes because my sister plays basketball, so I sometimes join in. I do tennis, and
It's a long list.
I do golf. I don't know if that's a sport, but it's still something.
So golfers would say it's a sport then.
And
so, Dad, what's that like for you to go from she's barely able to walk or not able to walk, use the wheelchair, and now she's here listing, 12 different sports that require feet and movement and courage and strength.
It's remarkable. I mean, it truly is remarkable, and we are so blessed with the help that we received and the prayers that we received to be in this position now. We truly would not have been on the path that we ended up on without being steered in the right direction, doors opening for us in a very special way, and the power of prayer was with us through our church family, and we felt that daily. And it's remarkable to look back. Every time we go to church, our church family are marveled by the progress that Emilia has made, because it was only just before Easter that we went together, and they were praying before the service for Emilia, and in we went. Emilia in the wheelchair, and we got a place at the front, and the church prayed for Emilia, and the following weekend, Easter weekend, we were actually with family elsewhere, and 1 week later, she walked back in. So that was just amazing.
That is just crazy. 1 week later, you walked back in from a wheelchair to walking. Yeah. Fear and even just not understanding what's happening in your brain and body, getting the wrong messages from people has a very, very powerful effect on our bodies. So that's, And the Lord says not to fear. So I love that church body coming alongside to help you.
Yeah, still pray for me to make sure that it won't happen again.
Okay.
And yeah.
Yeah. What would you do if it did happen again? Do you feel like, do you know that God has given you the courage to be able to, you could recover again. Do you know that?
Yeah. Because I've been through it all. I feel like I could go through it again, but I don't want to go through it again. But if I did, then I could beat it, and I have the tools, and I basically think I can do it.
Yeah, I agree. I know you can do it. Yeah, but I agree. Let's pray it doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What, looking back, Neil, what tools do you see that she used? Courage and huge.
Emilia was so trusting in the process and such a willing patient as well in that sense. So we started off really using Emilia's mother as an example of recovery from a mind-body syndrome.
Yeah.
My wife Katrina had fibromyalgia and Amy back in 2005, and after in and out of doctor surgeries, we found a therapist on mind-body medicine, and she recovered within 5 weeks. So using Katrina as an example, although Emilia was a much worse case in that sense, it was an example to Emilia and a live example of what could be achieved. And then she trusted completely with everything that was being, sort of said to her. And as she said, a lot of it was big words and maybe not easy to understand, but there were some amazing tools out there in cartoons and animated sketches and that sort of thing to give examples of how powerful the brain is and how it can be generated by the brain. And I think the more Emilia was in pain, she learned firstly that, as all the doctors would say, there's an element of distraction helps in that sense to the pain. Yeah. And through a lot of the reading that we were doing and understanding of the system and of the brain and neural pathways, we went turbocharged on distraction in a sense. And we said, well, actually, we won't go for distraction. What we'll do is we'll follow activities and certain other thoughts and that sort of thing in a far more positive way than just a distraction.
Yeah.
See how it goes. And we were able to do that in hospital and spend a lot of time talking about that sort of thing. Yeah. And that was really positive. So when the lead psychologist really recommended Emilia to be discharged because she felt that being a high achiever as she is, it would be best to try and get back into a normal environment despite the pain as quickly as possible. And that would mean going back to school. Yeah. Even though she would be in a wheelchair and in pain, that was still better than lying on a hospital bed or lying in her bed at home. Yeah. And so reintroducing activities was a key part to that element as well. And the health service were really helpful in that, with an occupational therapist visiting the school, and the school were amazing. in helping that process of transition from hospital back into school. So Emilia had safe places to go in the event of a flare-up, and that's happened a couple of occasions in the first week or so.
Yeah.
And then things settled down, but she was still in a wheelchair, but she was attending classes. And initially, she was to go for maybe half a day, every couple of days, but within 2 days, you were doing full days. So
Full days without a wheelchair.
full days in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Oh, in a wheelchair. Okay.
Yeah. And that's that worked well. So she was able to transition from hospital back to some sort of normality.
Yeah.
And then we continued what we were doing whilst we're out of hospital. So as I said earlier, just before leaving hospital, I had followed some of the dots on MindBody medicine, and I'd gone back to a doctor called Dr. John Eaton in the UK, whose book I'd read almost 19 years ago now, 18 years ago, and thought was very helpful. Found his website was now up and running and lots of information on it. Got another copy of his book, realized that one of the references was a Dr. John Sarno at the back of his, which I then followed. That had already in hospital led me to Howard Schubiner and some of the, in a sense, the explanations that he had come up with in a very understanding and non-scientific way that I thought was close to brilliant and so helpful. And we followed that. That took me back to Georgie Oldfield at CRPS, who I reached out for, and she recommended a couple of therapists that had trained through CRPS in the UK and Scotland, and I read their profiles and chose Carolyn Neeson in Glasgow, and I had an initial meeting with her on Zoom, and she was thankfully, she agreed to take the case of Emilia, and we travelled down weekly from mid-March to mid-April to see Carolyn. We had a week off for the Easter week, and Emilia, after seeing her in a wheelchair before Easter, again walked in for her next appointment to see Carolyn.
So the same with school.
In mid-April.
The same with school?
Yeah, I surprised my teacher. I didn't tell her anything. It's because her husband had this, but in his mouth.
Oh.
So she was amazed. And she did the biggest hug.
What? So what was that like for you? You went at some point in time, you decided, hey, I'm strong enough. I can face this pain, and I'm gonna use my legs. What was that first time like for you to get out of the wheelchair and walk into school or into your therapist?
Really hard. I did not want to.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to, but I didn't want to.
Okay.
Because I knew it was going to be slow. But I did one step and then 2 steps. And then I reached for goals. Every step I would get a sweetie. So I tried to do even more steps. And now I have a whole jar.
Of sweeties? Are those the little candies that have the plastic wrapper and there's probably like 15 in them? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, almost like little jelly.
Yeah, like Haribos.
Haribos? Have you got Haribos? Yeah.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. That's amazing. So you did your work for candy, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, easily bribed.
Easily bribed. Amazing. Yeah. Okay.
Like that pushed me to do even more than I had.
So for adults watching, I think we need to have some sort of treat at the end of our graded exposure. Lots of candy, snacks, coffee. Okay. Is there anything else along the journey that you want to share with people for hope or for encouragement? Any suggestions? Especially, I think, just listening to you talk about you bringing up the idea of mind-body syndrome to doctors. I love that. Any words of advice you have?
Well, try and get your mind off it. Pray. Ask your family for help. And listen.
And listen. Like listen to other people's help?
Yeah. Like what the doctors say, what your parents say, what everyone says.
Yeah. I love it. So when people say, you're courageous and you're strong and you've got this, you can change your brain and change your pain. We listen, right?
Like when somebody tells me to say those words, I would say them 7 times a day. It was hard when I was at school because I had to try and make room for that. So I normally go into a room where I could have my own time and I would just say those words. And then I just have some peace and just close my eyes and just have some peace.
Oh.
One of the ways we described going after it was to try and be relentless in your pursuit, in a sense, wasn't it? And so you almost the pain or the pain signals would be seen almost as an opportunity to go after it, in a sense, not to fight it in a way, but to through the knowledge and understanding that Emilia was able to learn to. I think one of the phrases I read or heard was to consciously talk to your unconscious.
Yeah.
In a sense, and to calm the brain. And there were animations that we came across on Michael Moskovich's website called Neuroplastics, which showed the various parts of the brain and little fires going off in each cortex. And one way that Emilia had an image of that in her head, and each time was to try and calm those fires, try and put those fires out through a positive action or a positive thought or through painting or this sort of thing, or puzzle solving. Because the brain can't do two things necessarily at once in each cortex, and that's what the neuroscience was sort of telling us as well. That in all the reading was that if you can calm this down, this is as the medic said, a neurological sort of disorder or software issue in a sense in your brain. But that's not to say that you can't actually retrain your brain, was another phrase that said. So one of our contacts who was so helpful at the start of the journey in mid-February had come across this website and Michael Moskovich, and she had professionally trained stroke victims on how to reuse a limb. And the moment she saw this, I can't pretend to be trained in anything like that, but she understood it immediately that it was the reverse of what she was trained to do in getting stroke victims to use a limb. And you're actually closing down a neural pathway rather than opening up a new neural pathway. Nice. And the moment she saw it, she went, I know that will work. no question. And 4 weeks later, she was clear. So that was a conversation and an introduction through our minister to a fellow member of a fellow Christian sister in that sense, and a member of the church. And she was so encouraging at that early stage in the journey. And yes, my wife had gone through something similar, but hearing of a more complex case, a more chronic pain case, in that sense, gave us the hope and the courage, I'd say, to stay on the path, really, because one thing that we did learn on the journey is there's a lot of information out there, and there is a huge amount that is quite easy to accept, and some of the strategies are simply to accept the cards that you're given in that sense, and say, well, we don't know why this happens, but it's just bad luck, and you just have to try and live and cope with it. And the lesson that we have from the recovering patients is that you don't need to accept that. You can choose to have a complete reversal, but it's your choice. And that was one of the hardest things to explain to a 10-year-old, was that as the one going through the pain, you need to be the one to get yourself out of the pain. There isn't a magic pill, and there isn't a magic doctor that can come along and take this away. This is all in the brain. So that was amazing for Emilia to take on board and trust the process, which is, I think, one of the phrases that I read in one of the books.
Yeah. You have a very brave daughter. You can do many things because you have learned how to face a very intense fear and instead choose courage, which is something that most of us do not learn. And that's something I'm so thankful for my journey that I learned, but most of the time we don't have that opportunity. I am curious, we've talked about church and God, and are you aware of what character of God that you have, I don't know, been drawn to or been blessed by in this journey, something like that you've taken away from Emilia's story?
I think as a family, we have been so supported and upheld by our church family and through prayer. It was unbelievable, and the love of our sort of fellow Christians has just been amazing, absolutely amazing. To receive so many cards and messages and voicemails from an early stage, and we reached out to the church for prayer mid-January. And we know we were constantly in their thoughts and their prayers, until we were contacted by even Christians from out with our church who we had never met, at all, sending messages, and that's was just incredible to be upheld in that way, and give strength and courage. And I suppose just remembering with faith that on a journey like that, however hard it is, you can endure it. And that's with God's strength. And my wife's, one of her favorite songs is Leona Lewis' Footprints in the Sand, which is a story of hardship and just a pair of footsteps in the sand, and the saying, "Where were you where are you, God, in these times of trouble? And he turns around and says, that's when I was carrying you. And that's, that's what we, kept true, kept in our hearts. So, and, in hospital and open wards and praying together and each night and each morning. So that was
Thank you.
Opportunity to come closer to God, actually, in that sense, because all other, yes, there were troubles, but all other of life's matters were put on the back burner, really, and we were able to spend time together, and that was pretty important, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for, sharing your story, Emilia. Again, just seeing that you are brave, you're on here, and people are going to grow and learn and be inspired and have hope from your story. So I just appreciate you both. Any final words before we say goodbye?
No.
Great. I love it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And so you're doing an amazing work in trying to get the word out there on MindBody medicine. And I hope, for one, we're getting close to that sort of breaking point where there's almost an epiphany in a sense, where the wider world go, hang on, this is something we need to pay more attention to. And this, as Penny mentioned to me, I think she felt that there was quite often a generation between the science and the medical world accepting science. And I think we must be pretty close to that generation.
I hope so. Because once you see it, you can't not see it. And it's just so clear that there are so many people in chronic pain that don't have to be, and moving towards mind-body medicine and courage and living your life abundantly is really important for the healing journey.
Yeah. That's great.
All right. Well,
thank you very much.
Yeah, don't go anywhere yet, but I'm just going to say goodbye to the watchers. So thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you next week. Thanks everybody. Bye.